Hello folks, Charlie Gipple here with CG Financial Group. I have two different training sessions that I typically do when it comes to indexed universal life insurance. This one that I want to share with you today also pertains to indexed annuities. But typically what those two different sections look like is, first of all, I talk with the agents about how to talk with the consumers about this looming debt crisis and the fact that with IUL, you get to pay taxes on the seed, but not the harvest, right? On the seed, what you put in today versus on the harvest, what you take out, say 20, 30, 40 years from now. But then that transitions into the product conversation, which is around indexing. Again, it's agnostic to index life or index annuities. But today I want to talk about the caps that are on index life insurance. I want to place a bet with you as well. If you were to ask your consumers, let's say you had a room full of 20 consumers, if you were to ask those consumers, which of the three scenarios do you think is going to happen in the United States stock market going forward, I guarantee you every time they're going to choose the third one. Mrs. Client, Mr. Client, do you think, first of all, we're going to have a market S&P 500 environment like what we did in the 1980s, where the market went up 12% per year, or the 1990s, where the market went up 15% per year? Do you think that's going to continue over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years? I guarantee you not very many of them will raise their hands. A little skeptical the American public is today, and it's no wonder, right? Or do you think the second thing is going to happen? Do you think we're going to have a Japan? Do you know that in 1989, the Nikkei 225 Japanese stock market was at around 40,000, 39,000 something. 20 years later, 75% or so of its value was decimated over an entire 20-year period of time. Who thinks that's the economy? Who thinks that's the stock market we're going to have going forward? Not very many people will raise their hands for that one as well. Or what about the third scenario here? The third scenario is we have a sideways but choppy market. I guarantee you, I will place a bet with you that 70, 80, 90% of those consumers raise their hands that that's going to be the situation going forward. Okay, Mrs. Client, Mr. Clients, with that said, let me show you an example here of a sideways but choppy scenario. Here is a sideways but choppy scenario. The market drops over a couple years, let's say by 49%, negative 49%. And we're going to take a decade here, right? Negative 49%. The next 5 years or so, let's say that the market goes up, let's call it around 100%. And then the next few years, let's say that the market drops by 57%, negative 57%. I haven't had my coffee yet. Then the market goes back up in that final year. Over that entire decade, let's say that that market finished down 24%, negative 24%. That is exactly what happened in the United States stock market from 2000 to 2010. Negative 49, positive 100, technically I think it was positive 99, negative 57, and then positive some change. Over that entire 10-year period, negative 24%. That can happen again going forward. These may not be as severe going forward. I mean, the financial crisis was horrific. The dot-com bubble, that was horrific as well. Maybe it's not quite that severe. Maybe it's more short-term and choppy, which would prove my point even further with the index products. But what if I told you this, Mrs. Client? What if I told you this, Mr. Client? That a majority of the years over that 10-year period of time, a majority of the years, the S&P 500 was positive. 6 of those 10 years, the S&P 500 was positive. And what if I told you that in those years where the S&P 500 was positive, with this product that has a cap of 12%, you can get up to 12% in that year. Yes, minus cost of insurance charges and all that other stuff, but you can get a credit of up to 12% in that year. In 6 of those 10 years, should this happen again. But what if I also told you that in 100% of those down years, which was only 4 years, but 4 fairly catastrophic years, in 100% of those down years, you got a 0 on your statement. Yes, cost of insurance charges would be deducted as well, but that's specific to each of you based off your health, your age, all that stuff. So I can't go into that right here. What if I told you that in 6 of those 10 years, you get up to 12% should the market do that, but in 4 of those 10 years, when the market dropped, you get a 0 on your statement, not a negative 57, not a negative 49. Is that something you'd be interested in? Because here would have been the scenario, was the scenario for some companies over that period of time, if you look at some past performance of some of these IULs, is from 2000 to 2003, you had a zero minus cost of insurance charges. And then going forward for the next 5 years, what did you have? You had pretty good growth. And some of those years that capped out. So that's the first 3 years, that's the next 5 years. And then what was it? 2008, the market was down. And then the last one. What you have here, not including cost of insurance charges, is instead of $100,000 going to $76,000, you have that $100,000 going to over $180,000, which a compound average growth rate over a 10-year period of time, what is that, 7 point something percent? If you know the past performance of some of these products, if you've looked at them, if you've requested this from the carriers, this is not hyperbole that I'm talking about here, right? Yes, there are cost of insurance charges that would bring my example down a little bit, but anything is better than a negative 24%. Typically what I get is this. How do the insurance companies do that? How do the insurance companies do that? Do you know how to answer that question? Do you know how to answer that in a simple, succinct format? Do you understand all the internal workings of how this IUL watch is built? How this index annuity watch is built? You could do this with index annuities as well. Plug in a 5% cap instead of 12%. By the way, caps were much higher back then than 5% as they are today, right? We're going to have this conversation on Thursday the 28th, which is just 3 days from today. You'll see the link in the bottom of this post. Register for the webinar because I'm going to talk with you. I'll give you a couple ideas like this, but mostly what the conversation is around is how the indexed watch is built. So there's an idea. There's also a teaser for my webinar on the 28th, which is Thursday. Join us then. Thank you and have a good day.